All
Yeah,
right.
so actually, Jack, I was kind of thinking an interesting topic for today because it's election season
Right.
here, right? And I'm sure if you walk around, I mean, I know you drive, but I take the subway every day, and so there's just campaigning happening everywhere.
Yep.
But it's also kind of fun for our because we are Americans and for the American listeners out there, it's also campaign season in America, right?
Oh,
And
well,
so
American campaigns last years.
well, yes, yes, that is very true. But that's
Yeah.
kind of what I wanted to talk about. Like, we don't need to get into the politics of the campaign today. I mean, we can a little, but I honestly only know like this much. Holds up my
Right.
fingers a tiny amount. I only know this much about the Korean politics. But for people who are interested in Korea or who have lived here or whatever and want to relive it, it could be interesting just to like say, this is what Korea does for campaigning. This is compared to American campaigning, just to see like what are our experiences of campaigning and elections like here. Less about the politics, because
Okay.
that's we aren't politicians. We aren't a political podcast.
No. Um, yeah, there's a couple of issues we could talk about, but first, I mean, I think let's talk about the campaigning.
Right.
The
Yeah, I mean, like,
music vans,
oh,
whatever.
well, let's start. So first off, just to set a little background, I think elections are next week, right? Next week, Wednesday.
April 10th, right?
And these are just like parliamentary elections, so it's not a presidential election because that's on a different
Right.
schedule now from this. That's actually an interesting thing, little background. Like the reason that it's on such a different schedule is because after Park Geun-hye, the last president, well, no, last president already actually, after she was kicked out, they had to do after she was impeached, they had to do a new presidential election, and so that started a whole new like cycle of five
Cycle of
years for
5 years.
presidents,
Yeah.
right? Like in America, I think if the president was impeached and removed from office, the vice president would just take over, and so
Hmm.
the election schedule would remain the same. Whereas here in Korea, it was like, oh, president's kicked out. Oh shit, new election in
New
1 month.
election. Yeah.
Go, and they just started all of that. So now elections, they used to be in what like when I first came to Korea, I think it was around October, November was I think elections for presidential elections, and now they're in May, I think, every 5 years. So that's kind of a funny little like it changed the whole country's presidential election system. But anyway,
Yeah.
so elections start our elections, sorry, they don't start. Although they actually start today for distance ones. So actually, your wife can go and vote today if she wants to.
I
So
mean,
you
what
can
about
vote.
us? Are you voting?
I can't.
I thought we can.
You can't. I'm on a different visa. Oh wait, no, we're just no, because you're on the Youngdukwan, the green card, effectively,
Yeah.
the permanent resident visa.
Yep.
I'm still on the marriage visa.
Oh, okay.
So I believe you can vote.
I think
Actually,
I can.
you
I
can't
can't
vote
vote
for
for the
president.
president, but I can vote
You
for like,
cannot.
yeah. I cannot, but
Yeah.
I can vote for
Right.
yeah, like parliamentary elections and like local
Right.
elections and stuff like that. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I need to get off my ass and try and upgrade to that visa one of these days. But there's a whole they've made it hard. When you did it, it was like sign a couple papers, right? It was
You
just like
sign a
done,
couple
done, done.
papers, show your bank account, and yeah. If there's enough
Yeah.
zeros
Now,
there, you can get it.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's still a requirement. But now I also have to either have a high enough TOPIK score, the Korean language test score,
Oh, that's not
or
bad for you.
um, yeah, it is. It is.
Really? Okay.
Or finish this KIP thing. It's called the Korean integration. There's two I's. Korean something integration program. It's basically a language slash culture course, but
Okay.
it's just a pain in the ass to get into. I haven't had time. I'm lazy. Combination of all
Yeah.
factors. I
Right,
haven't
right.
done it yet.
Yeah, it took you
Um,
years to get a new American passport, so
yeah,
you're
I was out. I was without a passport at all for 2 or 3 years. That was very
right.
strange. Like I had
You were
no passport just
completely
because during COVID I wasn't traveling.
marooned here. Yeah. Funny.
Anyway, that's off topic.
Hmm.
um, so the elections, you can start voting now. Um, although official election day is next Wednesday, I believe, which is why we don't have to go to school next Wednesday.
Right.
Yay, red day.
Yeah.
And campaigning only started, and here's where our American friends will be surprised and amazed. Campaigning only started 3 weeks ago.
Right.
right? Something like that, like approximately 3 weeks ago. Like I think elections are 1 month, no more, which is great because then you don't have to deal with the American elections, which are years almost long,
They never end. It's just as soon as one
pretty much.
cycle ends, the next one begins.
Yeah.
So
I
yeah.
will say that even though campaigning officially is only 1 month, there are political machinations happening constantly. Like before the last election, it was like, Yoon Sung Yeol, who's now the president, and Lee Jae-myung. And then of course there was like the other dude, like on what's his name? Whatever.
Yeah.
Um, like even though they weren't officially campaigning as president, so they didn't have their trucks driving around and all the people wearing their clothes, which we'll talk about in a minute. They were on TV every day for months ahead of the election, you know, just doing things to get their name and voice out, not officially as, like a candidate, but like well known, they are running, this is getting out there, it's like doing interviews. So it's not the same kind of campaigning, but there is some campaigning that happens, at least for the presidential elections, ahead of time, at least a
Right.
little bit. But it definitely isn't the same, American style where there's actual proper campaigning and, donating and all of that for months and months and months ahead of the campaign. So
Yeah.
when you walk around the streets these days, Jack, before the election, what do you see?
I
What
see
does campaigning look
a
like
group
in
of like
Korea?
5 or 6 Ajumas kind of holding up signs, like on my way to work, I saw a bunch of them holding up the number 8. So
Yep.
I don't know what it means. Like I wasn't I had no idea what that meant, but it was obviously something to do with like maybe a ballot measure or
Okay.
uh
You really don't know Korean, but you don't vote, Jack. You don't know anything.
what does the 8
So
mean?
okay, that's actually interesting. This is another big difference between America and Korea. So first off, I guess I'm also assuming that those women holding up the 8, and you'll see other people with other numbers as well. They're probably all wearing the same color clothing, right?
Yeah, I think they were all red.
Yeah,
Or something like that. Yeah.
interesting. I mean, in Seoul, red tends to be number 1, blue tends to be number 2, and then I'm not 100% sure on the other ones. I think 8 for me in my neighborhood. There's a purple color actually.
Okay.
So what these are though, and what the colors are, and the red and blue actually is funny because it's exactly the same as America. They correspond to the political parties,
Right. The People's Power Party and the
right? So
Democratic
that's red.
Party.
And the Democratic Party,
Okay.
that's blue, which is the same as America, right? So it's the conservatives are the red, and the more liberal, the Democratic Party tends to be blue. But then,
Right.
like 8 in my neighborhood is actually called the Jinbodang, which actually translates to Progressive Party, and they're
Right.
purple. And it's actually this young girl's that I don't even know. She's like probably just out of university. She looks super young. Her name is really interesting. Yu. Like I kind of want to vote for her just because she's young, progressive. Like I don't know anything, but
Right.
but that's an interesting thing that you pointed out though, because so right 8, that means that there's 8 in your neighborhood, at least 8 political parties that people can choose from,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
So that's a big difference here from Korea to America. Now in America, to be fair, there are other political parties.
Right, but
I mean, there's the
they have
Green
no
Party.
teeth at
There's
all. It's just yeah.
right. They're nothing. I mean, how many are there any Green members in Congress or in the House, like at all?
No,
I
no. I
honestly
mean,
don't. I
there's
probably
barely
not.
there might be a couple of independents. I
Yeah,
think
but
Maine
not
had
like any
one for a
Green.
while. I can't remember what his name was, but there was an independent from Maine. Um,
Uh,
but yeah, overall, we're a dual party system. I mean, that's it.
yes,
Yeah.
and to be fair with Korea, and I tried to look up these stats earlier, but the one webpage I found, by the way, my wife is yelling at me. I'm apparently colorblind. The purple party, or sorry, the number 8 party is light blue, not purple.
Oh,
Not
okay.
that it matters,
Okay.
but I'm terrible at colors. Um, but So I tried to look up the statistics earlier, and the website statista.com or something, you've got to pay for it to get the actual numbers, and I'm not going to pay for it. Um, but in Korea, so there are the 2 parties, right? There's like you said, the People's Power Party, which is the Republican, effectively the Republican Party,
You're right.
and then the Minjudang, which actually I think does translate to Democratic Party. It's exactly the
Mhm.
same. They pretty much control, I don't know, I'm gonna make this number up, but it's not too far off. Like probably like 70%, right,
Right.
between the two. But that's not 100%,
Right.
right? So they definitely are by far the biggest. They're the biggest two parties, and there is still a very big feeling here, especially when it comes to president, of you have to vote for one of those two parties or your vote is being thrown away, right?
Right.
And
Right.
and that's the same in America. Like it's it's like you should vote for Jill Stein instead of these people. And it's like you're just throwing your vote away if you're doing that.
Right.
It's like it there is
It's
that
a
feeling, but
yeah.
mm,
Yeah. It's
but
performative,
in Korea,
performative politics
yeah,
in a way. Yeah.
yeah, for the other ones. But here, the smaller parties do have some seats,
Right,
some,
because it's a parliamentary system, the way that they
right.
set up their Congress. Yeah.
Right. So there are some people who get into it not in one of the main two parties. So not a ton. It's still, primarily the main two, but there are other people doing it. Um, right. So that's another
Yeah.
significant difference. But yeah, so for the past month, you walk around, like I go up to my subway stop and entering before I go down the stairs, there's some people wearing like, blue color and they're just like, oh yeah, say, oh, hello, hello, vote for us and handing me cards and stuff. Vote for us. And then I walk down the stairs and there's some people wearing red and they're like, hi, 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 vote for us. And then I walk a little bit further just before the gate into the subway and there's people wearing green or whatever other color it is. And they're like, hi, 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 vote for us, vote for us. And like outside, like you said, there's trucks driving up and down the streets these days,
Right.
with like, sometimes it's got the candidates standing on the truck and there's like music playing. They're like giving little mini speeches as
And it's
they
just
go up and down the
blaring
road.
loud too. I mean, it's just
It
it's
really is.
ridiculous. I mean, I think it's like it kind of makes sense because like, in America, it's all TV ads. That's it. If
Mm,
you put enough negative
that's a good
ads
point.
in on the screen, and you can sway a district or whatever one way or the other, and it's just, one after the other on especially like local
Mm,
television stations and stuff like that.
right.
Apparently, it's got to be a law against that here because I don't see
There
any of
must
that
be.
stuff on
Yeah.
television.
That's another good point and another good difference. Yeah, exactly. All of the campaigning happens just walking. I mean, unless you're,
Right.
reading the news or looking at political things specifically, which, most people don't do. Um, all of the campaigning is just it's just on the street. So it's probably name recognition is just a big part of it. That's why they have just their names and they've got their sign saying like, my
Yeah.
name is Kevin, vote for me. Um,
Yeah.
and so yeah, it's just
It's
getting your
interesting.
name out, and they have little like on their that placards, that those people are carrying. They've got little like slogans, so it's like, here's my name or here's the candidate's name, and it's just little basic slogans, like I'm gonna, like in my neighborhood, for example, there's a big golf course. That one of the issues is, should they get rid of the golf course and put in apartments basically. And a lot of people are opposed to that. Like even I'm kind of opposed to it, even though I'm not a golfer. I don't use the golf course. I just don't want, another 8 million people living in my neighborhood, not
Right.
too far up from me.
Yeah.
So like they're already building apartments everywhere anyway. So like on these big posters I go by and it's just like, I'm opposed to this reforming or whatever. And it's just really quick, like just little slogan things. It's like, oh, that's my stance on this. And so that's really all that I know. Again, I'm, not paying attention to it. I'm not even able to vote. But that's really what the elections are about. It's getting your name out there, saying one or two things that are for, and of course you're connected to a party so that people know, oh, that you're connected to this party, so of course you're going to support these general policies,
Right.
of course. But yeah, it's just getting your name out, knowing what party you are, and then hoping people vote for you, I guess. Over that 1 month, you've got 1 month to just spam your name
Yeah.
everywhere
But
as
it's
much as possible.
their ground campaign is different than America style. Like in
Oh
America, if
sure.
you really want to make a difference, the feet on the ground, boots on the ground really does make a difference. But they'll come up to your house, knock on your door, and they'll talk to you for 5 minutes.
In the States, you mean, right?
And they have a counter for, they meet a conservative, they have counters for
Oh,
all of
right, right.
their
Yep.
talking points. They got kind of a cheat sheet, kind of with
Right, right.
talking points, the counterpoints. Here it's more of like it's like the ground level version of television. Like you said, it's very quippy,
Just
it's very
loud, big.
impersonal, it's just
Mm,
flashy and just like it's like startling you. You know, you're just driving
Mm.
along and all of a sudden there's this rock and roll, music or something, coming up, and a van with a big sign on it with a guy's, it's always some ajushi with like kind of balding, jet black hair, or whatever. And and it just catches you off guard.
Mm.
It's a different strategy. It's like you said, it's almost like yeah, it's very quippy, like slogan, and you're on your way. It's not let's
Yeah,
talk about issues. It's not having a conversation.
right. Yeah, and it is kind of like a TV ad as well, where it's a little bit annoying. Like I said, I walk to the
Right.
subway station. I've got to actually walk around these groups a little bit. I mean, they try and get themselves out of the corner because they know they don't want to annoy, all the commuters, of course, every day. But I'm like dodging groups of campaigners, all, I don't want to say yelling at me, but all in chorus being like, vote for us, vote for party number one, we're amazing, or whatever their slogan is,
Yeah.
right?
Is it a nuisance more than like, I wonder if they're like, for me, it's almost, I'm like, I've said this in my head like probably 100 times, like if I could vote, or if I were to, be bothered to vote,
Mm,
I would vote against whoever that is, because that's annoying me right now. It's like really, it's
right.
really in your face, and really it's cloying and noisy and just like awful. But they all do it. So it's like you
They all do
have
it.
to, that's like the baseline, is you've got to get these
Yeah.
people out there waving your sign around, but it really is not, policy oriented. It just seems to be
Yeah, it's more just getting the name out. But
name
like it is
recognition.
kind of cute seeing some differences. Like I was mentioning, so there's the two big parties, right? And then, like I said, there's that the number eight party in my neighborhood, this young girl, the progressive party. And like I don't really know her policies at all. I'm just progressive and think young people need to be in politics, and so I would vote for
Yeah,
her
I
if
would
I had
probably
the
vote for
option.
her anyway. I'd be like, cool,
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah, exactly. Young progressive woman, she gets my vote.
You had me at progressive.
Compared to
Yeah.
the other one.
Yeah.
Um, but it's kind of funny because her party is definitely one of the smaller parties. Like I don't know the percentages, but they're definitely a much smaller group. Like maybe they have a couple of seats in the house, maybe.
Hmm.
Um, but instead of like big trucks driving down the street, blaring massive slogans and music and everything, we were out walking the dog the other day, and on like the bike trail, like next to the bike trail, they're in like a little teeny like golf cart thing driving past with their thing going like vote for us. And I'm like, that's just so cute. Like I kind of want to vote for you more because like you've just got these like, it feels more
Down to earth,
grounded.
authentic,
Yeah,
kind of,
yeah,
yeah,
I'm sure it's not. It's just because that party doesn't have enough money to afford, the big things. I'm
right.
sure it's not, but it feels a little bit different for me than the big noisy one. I
Yeah.
mean, it's the same thing. It's just a scaled down version of it. Like we're gonna go meet people at the bike trail instead of uh, the subway station. Um,
Um, so I thought maybe if I don't we don't want to get into politics too much, but there's a couple of issues that were kind of that I think are kind of the swing issues, right? And the first one, did you
mm,
read the Green Onions article? Did you hear about that?
kind of. Fill me in. I know a little bit
Okay.
about it, but not much. But
So the president
I'm assuming it's
was doing
because
a kind
prices
of
of things, right?
photo, I think he was doing like a photo op type of situation,
Yeah, I
and
saw it on the news.
it just kind of showed it was not a good moment for him, because it kind of showed how out of touch he was. Like, how much do you think this batch of this bundle of green onions cost? And he said
How much could a banana
875
cost?
won,
ten
I think.
dollars?
Well,
How
he said
much?
800 won or 875
Eight
won or
hundred
something.
one.
It's
And
4,000
for the people
won.
listening, that's like 75 cents.
Yeah,
But
like
yeah.
75 cents. Yeah, maybe in like 1973 you could get it for that much. I don't know. But it
And
was
how
it
much
was
was it actually?
4,000. So
Right.
it's,
Yeah,
off
and green
by,
onions, I mean, are like, always one of the cheaper foods because they grow out of
yeah.
anything. They're like super easy to make. And so yeah, having a bag of green onion for 4,000 won is actually quite expensive. I mean, these days food prices are like fruit and veggies are crazy expensive here.
Well, that's the bigger issue, is it shined a light on, or shone a light. I'm not sure if I said that right.
Mm,
On the inflation issue, which is the
exactly. And him
yeah,
being so out of touch. So that's why, okay, I did see him
yeah.
do that, but I didn't, I It was just on the news when we were in passing, like eating dinner or something, so I didn't catch all the
Well, it's like,
details.
how are you gonna fix the economy if you don't even know what, a carton of milk is or whatever? They do this with, like, American presidents all the time. George
Yeah, yeah.
Was George Bush Senior.
Mm.
Went into a grocery store and he was just flummoxed
Oh,
by the whole
really? I don't remember
process.
this one.
Yeah, he couldn't. What would Dr.
A bit
Oz,
before my time.
was buying like
Mm.
broccoli and had no idea what the prices of that were because they're out of touch millionaires. They haven't done their own
Right.
shopping in decades. Um,
Mm.
and I don't think this president is like an out of touch millionaire necessarily. I just think that he made a mistake. But they grabbed onto it and made a headline out of it. But yeah,
Mm.
inflation is the big issue, is who's going to fix the economy. And
This election as well, in terms of presidential, because so again, I just really quick did some research, and the his party, he's of the like Republican Party. I'll just use the American names
Sure,
to keep it simple. So he's basically a Republican, and the House is mostly controlled. Like, and remember when he won the election, I think we mentioned this in an episode here when after he won.
0.75% or something. It was just a
Right,
tiny margin.
it was the closest margin in Korean history. It was
Right.
like he barely, barely, barely squeaked to the win. So it was crazy close. And his party is not in control of the House right
No,
now.
they've been basically,
Um,
all his domestic policy has been just completely,
right.
you
And
know,
he's not very popular right now. I mean,
right.
presidents are never very popular, but
Well,
he's
especially
like
when there's high
very,
inflation. I mean, high inflation,
yeah, it's
you're not going to be,
no one's
you're
gonna.
not going to win any friends
Yeah, so
during
this
that period.
these elections next week are going to be interesting to see what happens in terms of, the House demographics, like which parties will take power or remain in power or
Right.
whatever. Because it basically affects like will this president be able to accomplish whatever he wants to or not? And it can be your opinions on if those are good things or not. But,
Yeah.
is he going to be able to do anything? Because right now he's
Well, let me
blocked
ask
on a
you,
lot. I mean,
I've got one more
not
question about
everything,
the
but
second issue, is the medical doctors in
yeah,
Korea.
that one's a big one. And
What are
this is
you,
something that I
do you
still
support that idea of like more, allowing more
well,
students?
we should explain what this topic
Yeah.
is before that.
Oh, sure.
And this is a big topic that I almost like I'm happy to talk about it, but I want to keep our topic very, you know, surface level because this is a topic that's been going on. I mean, the strike now for 2 months, 3 months
Hmm.
now. It's been going on for a long time, and there's a lot of things that are happening that I am not up to date with.
Yeah, yeah.
Like I don't know
Just
everything.
on the surface level, I'm like, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. 2,000 more medical doctors sounds great,
Right,
but there's
right,
obviously
because
some
the issue,
opposition to it, within the medical
right.
community. So,
I mean, so add whatever you need to jump in here anytime. I try and give a quick summary of it. Korea is experiencing a pretty extreme doctor shortage these days, and we'll come back to some reasons why in a minute. And so the president is basically like, all right, well, let's make more doctors. Let's because they have like limits on how many people can be doctors. So X
right.
number of students per year can enroll in medical schools. And he's like, let's make it plus 2,000. I don't know what the current number is, but plus 2,000. And all the doctors are just like, oh no, you didn't,
Mhm.
because they're basically saying, this will cut into their prestige if there's more doctors, and they will cut into their profits and things like that if there's more competition for their jobs. And so they're like, no new doctors. And so a lot of doctors have gone on strike. They're like, we're going on strike. We're not going to be a doctor for a while,
In
until
a
you
shortage,
say,
in a time of
yeah,
shortage.
well, there's already a shortage.
Right.
Um, and so, based on my quick summary there, I think most people are going to be like, well, screw the doctors. That's very selfish of them. And in general, I would say I do agree with that, but there's it's a much more nuanced topic than I'm making it sound.
Right.
And here's where I don't know all of the nuance. There's a lot more to it than just the doctor saying like we want to be rich and famous, and so there needs to be fewer doctors so that I can keep my prestige. That's a part of it, but I don't think that's the entire thing.
No, I mean, the article that I read
Yeah, tell me
had
more, and
mentioned,
I've got a
well,
couple of things that I can add as well, but
I, d-
give me what you've
I don't
got.
know much more than what you summed it up perfectly, but there was a mention of a medical student or a resident, medical resident,
Mm,
working, 100 hours a week at a hospital for between 2 to 4 million a month, including overtime.
mm.
So
Is this during the
there,
strike or before the strike?
this is like, I guess before the strike, like
Okay, so this
these were
was
the conditions of what was happening. This is
ah,
so this idea that doctors are automatically rich in Korea is kind of a
right, right,
is
right, right.
not, this idea that they're like, these kind of is prestige positions, and kind of sitting on their
Mm,
throne, looking down. It's like they're not. They're working their butts off
right.
for peanuts a lot of times if you calculate the hours to the money, especially when they're first starting out, as residents and stuff.
Yes, when they're first starting,
Yeah,
I believe that's true. I have heard a statistic, and I don't know how true this is. It was like from somebody in the office. They were saying that like the average doctor still does make like a couple hundred K a year, something like that. So I mean that's pretty significant salary, but I want to know more about that number because
I
I
think
don't
that's a
believe
high
that's
number.
entirely
I think some of the maybe the more specialized medicines,
right.
maybe like 180, 190 or something like that.
Mm,
Um
and that's
but
still not
that's
huge.
but like a pediatric doctors make half that.
Right. Well, and that's
So
the other issue that so and I agree, and this is where the nuance comes in, right? It's the doctors are striking for not just to maintain their golden throne, because maybe they don't have a golden throne exactly.
right.
Like some maybe do, some don't.
Hmm.
But the bigger issue as well is like when we talk about a doctor shortage in Korea, although yes, there is just a general shortage of doctors. I haven't actually had any problems with doctor shortages. Actually, I mean, I had hernia surgery just a couple months ago. No problem. I walked into the hospital, and this was during the strike.
Right.
I went in, met the doctor, got the surgery, was in the hospital, was out. My wife just had like a quick biopsy done. She was in the hospital and out, no problem. Like she didn't have any issues. So it does very much depend on where. Like I haven't been affected by it yet, but when we talk about this shortage of doctors, the shortage is in two places specifically. One is specific fields of medicine. So you mentioned pediatrics,
Hmm.
right? Pediatric doctors are right now like a like there's very few of them. There's not many at all,
Because they
which
go where the
is an
money
issue.
is. Yeah. Is
Right. I mean that's the thing is
yeah.
I mean well that's the big issue, right? They all go where the money is, and one that's in the fields
Cosmetic
like plastic
surgery.
surgery,
Yeah.
cosmetics, exactly.
Yeah.
So pediatric, there's I have to remember pediatrics is the one that I can think of off the top of my mind, but there's two or three other fields that are very in demand. People need them. Like we need pediatric doctors, um, but there aren't any. And
And
there's a
this is
couple of
an
other fields that
aging
are needed.
country. I mean, so
I mean,
geriatrics
that's
is
another
another area
reason.
that's really going to be important because you're
Yeah,
talking
but that's
about
another reason that people don't want to go into pediatrics because they see it as a dying field in
right, yeah,
Korea,
with
right?
the lowest
So,
birth rate,
right.
there's
Um,
no kids,
but like I haven't experienced this because I don't have kids of my own, of course. But we have a couple of my wife's cousins have young babies still, like 1 2 year old. And we've heard stories like kid gets sick and they're unable to get a doctor, go to the doctor. Like it's hours and hours and hours and hours of waiting, or that they just turn them away because they can't get in or whatever. So it is affecting people in
Yep.
pediatrics. And
And
again,
small
there's a couple of
towns
other
in the
fields
countryside as well.
and small towns. That's the other
Yeah,
thing.
yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
So just straight increasing the doctor number is good, but it won't fix the problem because the problem isn't necessarily just pure numbers, it's numbers
Right.
where they matter.
Do we need 1,000 more, breast augmentation clinics? And it's like, what are we
More
talking
eyelid
about here?
surgery than that. But yes,
Yeah,
yeah, the
yeah,
plastic surgery. Right. And so like I read one article in the our university has an English newspaper which I read, which is great. And sometimes their topics are a little bit tough for university crowd, like, but they're talking about like big issues, which is fun for me because I like to hear what the students are thinking.
yeah.
And one of the topics recently was about this doctor strike. And so one of their suggestions is like maybe, and I don't know how this would work, but say that doctors after medical school have to do X number of years or months or something outside of Seoul, for example. Right? They've got to
Right.
go to somewhere and then come back into Seoul. But because exactly the people because everyone in Korea, not everyone, but so many people are moving here into the capital area that, again, it's a dying field. The doctors don't want to go to these small
You just
areas because
described the
there's no
plot
one
of the
there
TV show Northern Exposure, I think.
today. Um, right. And that's the issue though. So one, the doctors aren't like, they're not going into these small towns and they're not going into these fields because these fields and small towns are, for
It's
lack of
like
a
a
better
dead
word,
end kind
dying.
of. Yeah, right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And even if those fields aren't dying, like you were saying before as well, they don't pay very well. Like I heard someone
Mhm.
talking about how pediatrics doctors, they even assuming they make the same amount of money as, similarly trained doctors for like an ENT clinic or whatever in my neighborhood. Like, and the ENT clinic in my neighborhood, by the way, is always packed, like always packed,
Yeah,
because
yeah. Same
everyone's
with
got a
like,
head cold.
yeah.
Um, so, but like, assuming that they get the same amount of money, which isn't true, but let's go ahead and get that factor just set. Assuming the ENT and the pediatrician is making the same amount of money, it's infinitely easier to be an ENT where someone comes in with the sniffles, you poke into their nose a little bit, give them some meds, and send them on their way, versus dealing with a whiny, crying, difficult child whose parents are looming over as well, making sure that you don't do anything wrong. So
Yeah, yeah.
again, like these fields, people don't want to go into them because they see them as, potentially dying anyway. And then they're like, well, not only is that field, just not going to pay me what it is, but it's fucking hard. Like, I just don't want to do
Yeah,
that
it is.
because I could do this
Yeah,
other field that's infinitely easier or considerably easier for the same amount of money, assuming the money's even the same.
right.
And so that, I mean, I think that's like a very cursory glance at this doctor strike. There's definitely some more nuance to it, and it's been going on for a while now. And so like some doctors are on strike, and some I think it's mostly young doctors that are on strike though. Do you know, is that true? Like mostly
I don't know
residents,
actually. I
or
know
is it?
that I've even had a
Yeah,
student
this is where.
who, yeah, even in the medical school, like
Yeah, we
they're
teach medical students, of course.
yeah, yeah. So it's I don't know exactly. I would I'm not even going to venture a guess because I'm not sure, but yeah, I do agree with you that it is a more nuanced issue than, it looks like the 2000 is like, okay, that's a quick fix to this issue,
Hmm,
but it runs a lot deeper than it's more complicated, and it's not necessarily um, greedy doctors not wanting any
right,
competition. It's it's
right.
it's
That
it's
might be a factor, but it's not the only factor.
right. And it sounds like probably for a majority of doctors they're more like they're not ultra rich, they're doing well,
Hmm.
but we're not talking
I mean, they're
about
doctors. They should be making more than some people. I think like
the
it's
residents
an
should be
important
making more
job.
than 2 to 4 million a month. I mean, that you
Right.
should make more than a Hagwon teacher, teaching English,
Agreed.
So yeah.
Agreed. I will say just one thing to kind of finish off this is that I think, it's good that we have tried, probably not very well, but we have attempted to show that
Clumsy.
this is a nuanced issue. And, just we aren't familiar with all of the nuance. But the fact that we aren't familiar with the nuance, I think, is pretty much how most people view this. Most people in the country don't really know all of the issue. And so most people and most of the news is just like, greedy doctors on strike. We need more. They're being uncool. And so I think the general feeling of most Korean citizens about this, most again, some people are more politically savvy than others and or than us. Most people though are against the doctor strike because they just feel that it's the doctors being greedy. Now that's not entirely true, and that's what we've tried to
Right.
say,
Because it's an
but
easier way
that's
to to
how the
to
doctor
understand
strike.
it, though. You know what I mean?
Right,
And we have to remember one more thing. Adding 2,000 new medical students does not make 2,000 new doctors. It makes 2,000 new
right,
doctors in the year 2035, 10 years from now,
right,
when they're fully trained.
right.
So
Another
this is
important
not a
factor.
quick fix. It's not like some, silver bullet that's gonna, solve the problem. This is
Yeah, and
just
even that 2000, I think I've seen numbers isn't really like the doctor shortage is apparently a pretty big issue, and it's getting bigger and bigger as people are retiring and moving into different fields and things. So,
yeah.
yeah, in general, I'll say my opinion. I do think that we do need more doctors. Like I think that yes, the 2000 is probably a good thing, but I think
Mhm.
that just the rubber bullet of bam, boom, 2,000 new doctors. That's not, going to fix the problem
No,
because, as we said, those people just might move into, the same fields that everyone else is moving in.
right.
Um,
It
but
doesn't
then
mean that it's a
again,
bad, it doesn't mean it's a bad thing to do.
no,
It's just
exactly. I
maybe
That's why
like
I'm still in
not, it's
favor
not a
of it.
fix for this problem, you know? It's like
Right.
that
Yeah.
addresses a future problem, but for right now,
Exactly.
yeah, it's fascinating to kind of watch it. It hasn't affected
Yeah.
me,
I,
like you
I
said. I have had no problem getting
mm,
into the doctor, in and out. So,
Same. Yeah, it hasn't affected me, but I do know people who have been affected, at least well, actually, the people that I know who've been affected are not because of the strike. They've been affected because of the lack of pediatricians.
yeah,
The
yeah,
strike
yeah,
itself hasn't affected me or anyone that I know yet, I believe, but it's definitely a thing, and it's definitely affecting some people, of
yeah.
course.
All
But
right.
yeah, I think that's enough. We don't want to shoot ourselves in the foot by trying to say more of what we don't know
No, I
about
think
this topic.
we kind of, it's like landmines, like I don't think we stepped on any, so I think we're probably
That's
okay.
a Yeah, as long as we're
Um,
safe. Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
I think we tried to as long as, even if we don't know all of the sides of it, just by acknowledging that there are other sides is important.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think we
And but that
kind of,
is definitely one of the big factors in the election coming up as well. Is like that and inflation are the two big things that
yeah.
are, that's what the people are campaigning on these days. Like, how
Y-
do we
That's the
curb
tide that the
inflation
president's
and
swimming against
doctors?
right now is these two issues,
Yeah,
and they're really big ones. And I don't think it
they
bodes
are.
well for him, necessarily. I don't know. We'll see. It'll be really fascinating to see what how the People's Power Party, the PPP,
Mm.
how they do in the on the
Yeah, we can come
parliament.
back in a couple of weeks after the election and kind of just do a quick update, about what happened, regardless of our opinions of what happened. Just tell people, like what the
Right.
numbers are and see what that is. But anyway, if you're interested in global politics, people out there, if you're interested in global politics, there's an election happening in Korea,
Yes.
and it's happening quick. It's not the 10 months until the American election. It's next week. It just started. It's going to be over before we even knew what happened, and then there's going to be some changes in parliament. I mean,
Yeah.
we'll see what the numbers, how things shift. I'm curious to see. I'm definitely curious to keep your ears out. Check the news.
Likewise, yeah. So listeners out there, you can send us an email, thesoulpatch@gmail.com. You can go
Yeah,
to our
tell us if
website.
what we don't know,
Yeah, tell us what we
please.
don't, just tell us all the ways we stepped on it here. And you can go to our website, thesoulpatch.com, for every episode there. We have a YouTube channel. You can check out our episodes there if you want to see us actually talking to each other. But yeah, and with that said, I guess we'll see you next time. Thanks, Kev. Great
And
chat.
enjoy the weather. It's spring. Go get
Yeah, I
the
know.
cherry
It's
blossoms.
lovely.
Go for a
Yep.
walk.
All right. Take
All right, catch
care.
you next time.